On this episode of the Oklahoma Breakdown with Eichert and Lehman, ESPN's Dusty Dvoracek joins us to talk about the biggest stories in college football. We talk about Oklahoma State's players returning to campus today. We discuss the details of what a 6-week preseason could look like in college football. And we examine the letter the Power 5 commissioners sent to Congress regarding name, image, and likeness. In Football Guys Talking Basketball, we discuss the NBA's plan to return to play with 22 teams. We give you our winners and losers of the weekend and talk some Women's College World Series in Keeping It Local. As always, we finish by answering a few of your Twitter questions. Please download and subscribe to the podcast, rate it 5 stars and write us a good review. Follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search Oklahoma Breakdown on any of those and you'll find us. All right, our man Michael Hosty will kick this thing off. It's time for the Oklahoma Breakdown. It's a beautiful Monday, June 1st. Now we're recording this on Sunday night, and a whole lot is going on in the United States right now. We're dealing with coronavirus. We've got protests across the country, but we're going to try to take your minds off all of that for a little bit. Now we'll touch on a little of it, but we're here to talk about sports, especially college football. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about college football. And to help us do that, it's our pleasure to be joined by Dusty Dvoracek. You can see him on ESPN. You can see him on News 9. You can hear him on WWLS, The Sports Animal. Anyone that has listened to this podcast from the beginning is very familiar with this man. Dusty, how we doing, man?
Doing great, boys. Long time no talk. Great to join you fellas again. I hope everybody's doing well.
Unfortunately, really, I guess things have happened, but no action yet. But, I mean, we're in a different world than we were last time we talked as far as people showing up and stuff, or at least having days to show up. But we still have had no action to speak of yet. But we're close, boys.
We haven't, but I'll just say I feel like almost daily, definitely weekly, more and more news, positive news, trending in the direction to having college football, a lot of football on time coming up in the next several months, which I think I speak for everyone on the show. That is fantastic. And let's keep rolling in that direction.
There's absolutely no doubt about it. I'd like to not lose my other 2 jobs, seeing I already lost one. I wouldn't like to lose all 3 personally, guys. But so we mentioned it. There's different schools. They're bringing guys back for voluntary workouts at different times throughout the month of June. OU is July 1st. We know these dates that have been established, but Oklahoma State is ahead of the game, right? Because Oklahoma State's coaches and staff, they got tested for COVID-19 on Friday, and the players are allowed to return to campus Monday. Now, Spencer Sanders, I was interviewing him on my SiriusXM show, and he actually told me that this was going to happen like 10 days ago. So Mike Gundy has been planning this for a while. This is what he has been telling his players at Oklahoma State, and they're going to quarantine them on campus for 2 weeks, and then they're going to start June 15th. The day that the Big 12 said voluntary workouts can start in the conference, Oklahoma State is going to hit the ground running. And frankly, I think this is a great job by Mike Gundy. I really do. I know back when he said, hey, May 1st, and we all kind of poked fun at him, but he's been very proactive, and he's got his guys back on campus. I mean, he's going to have a head start on a lot of the competition. And usually in this sport, boys, you're just looking for any competitive advantage, and this is one of those.
What I like about it, they didn't have to say nothing. They got a task force put together. They assessed the situation. They looked at what their resources were, what the best plan of action is, and they went with it. This is completely different than when Mike Gundy spoke. What was that, back in April, when this was so fresh, very new. And I commend him, Oklahoma State, because I'm going to tell you this. I don't think they're going to be the last Big 12 school to start when the Big 12 says they can start. As a matter of fact, if I'm guessing, I bet there will be most schools starting on April the 15th. So, and the other thing I like about this is having the kids there for 2 weeks to quarantine, where you can try to make sure that they actually did a quarantine. You know, Oklahoma, they're going to do a virtual quarantine. It's a little different. You're putting a little bit, I mean, all of it, you're trusting your players. I don't know if it necessarily matters, but to your point, Gabe, they get there tomorrow and they're going to start their 14-day quarantine. And then 2 weeks from tomorrow, they're going to hit the ground running. I'm sure we're going to debate. We can get into it. What do those 2 weeks mean? Or in the case of Tennessee, what does that 3 weeks truly mean? I'm not going to sit here and say I think it's the difference in winning a game or winning a conference or winning a national championship, because I don't know, and I don't know if anyone can truly know. But I do know this. If I had the option as a player, or if I was a coach and we're putting, health, I don't want to say we're putting it aside, but all things equal, I want as many days to prepare as I can possibly get, plain and simple. I don't know, again, I don't know if it necessarily means you're that much better, but I would rather have those days. You've got great facilities at Oklahoma State, a lot of these places. I would rather have my college football players training on that equipment, overseen by my staff, eating on the training table that's provided by them. And I just, so good. I think it's good. It's positive. And I'm glad that we're going to start to get these college kids back on campus in the Big 12, Ted.
Here's the one thing I think is interesting. If you're a player, what have you always been told? Like, the difference between winning and losing is just it's an inch, right? Does your foot?
It's a sprint. A sprint.
Does your foot touch the chalk, or are you a couple inches short? That's the difference between winning and losing, right? So that's been pounded into everyone's head.
Should I just put the Al Pacino speech in Any Given Sunday in right here? That's what I should do.
The man in front of your face.
In front of your face.
That's exactly it. I mean, because that's what as football players, that's what we've been. It's like ingrained in our soul that it's all the fine details. It's the little bit. It's, the extra couple reps in practice that your competition's not getting. It's the doing a little bit more in the weight room. And then here we are, we're going to be sitting back, tapping our feet while all of our competition is out there, doing work. And it just like Dusty, like you can't quantify that 3 weeks later start than Tennessee is going to equate to, 14 points on the football field or a couple extra first downs or turnover. You can't do that. But the problem is, and we've talked about this all along, it's going to be the first thing that's brought up should you lose that game. And,
don't lose the fourth quarter.
Exactly.
Do not lose the fourth quarter.
If here's the thing, if you're having penalties, if your guys look out of shape, losing the fourth quarter, just everything's not clicking, that's what's going to come up. But at the end of the day, it's the situation that they have. It's kind of what they've decided to go with. You got to make the best of it, right? And there's got to be a lot of trust in the players to be out there making sure that not only are they getting their stuff in as far as knowing their football, the ins and outs of what goes on offensively and defensively, but you can't start July 1 like you just got back from spring break and you're fat and out of shape. They need this team to show up July 1 trimmed, ready to roll, in shape, so they can hit the ground running.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Right. It's showing up after the longest spring break in the history of college sports.
No doubt.
The most epic spring break ever.
That's what these college coaches, we all talk to them. They know. They don't know. They talk to their guys. They're doing 10 weeks of Zoom meetings a week, so they see them. They don't know how hard they're working. There is a trust. There is an accountability on those players. More veteran, players that have taken this time seriously, it's going to pay dividends, and especially at a place if you're starting later in the game, like Oklahoma is, they're going to find out pretty quickly. Like, you can't have guys that have trouble keeping weight on come in really light, and July 1 be where you're starting. Like, no, they need to already be there, right? You can't have guys that have problems being overweight now come in July 1 overweight because now you're that much further behind the game. So it'll be interesting from the Oklahoma standpoint to see what happens. Back to Oklahoma State, and this is one thing I want to say kind of for both Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. I choose this, which, by the way, I think Oklahoma, we'll see, but I think they're going to be one of the last schools and probably the Power Five.
Yeah, no doubt.
Not, I mean, I think that we'll see. There may be some others, but I mean across the country. I don't know many places will start as late as Oklahoma. And I'm not here to bash them. They've got a plan. They've got their advisement, and no different than in the real world. People, I've got really good friends that aren't comfortable coming out yet, that they're staying at their houses, and that's cool. And that's up to them. And I kind of feel the same with this. But I do want to say that I don't think the SEC starting June 8th, I don't think Oklahoma State having players tomorrow and starting June 15th is ridiculous, okay? I don't think it's crazy. I just left baseball practice with my son. We had 12, 10-year-olds, and we just had baseball practice. And I went and worked out at my gym yesterday, right? So, I mean, I was at a practice, and I've been working out at a gym. Not much unsimilar to what these college kids are going to be doing on, I might tell you, much safer places than gyms that I go into, or probably even environments that I'm putting children in. So I just want to make sure we keep that in perspective. I don't think that these schools, Big 12 schools, places opening up in June when they're allowed, I don't think that they're running any more risk maybe than Oklahoma would be in July. But if your tolerance isn't there yet, I'm okay with that too. I'm not here to bash, but I just want to say, I don't think that we are having these college teams rush to get back. I think that they've waited their time. And Ted, this is just me personally. I do think it's safe, given if they're going to have all these things in place for them to get back and start to get to work. And then I think as weeks go on, they're going to get more and more ability to get, these kids more in a team practice type of setting as we work our way through July into August.
I agree 100%. I've been fighting this for a long time that the data really says.
Just say it. Just say you wish OU was doing what Oklahoma State is doing, because I will say that. I wish OU was doing what Oklahoma State's doing, Ted.
Well, here's one of the problems with coming back July 1st. Everyone's what do we do if someone tests positive? Like, what's kind of the protocol? Are we going to have everything in place for the testing and all the different – there's a lot to be worked through. If you come back June 8th or June 15th and the first 10, 15 days are kind of a you-know-what show, well, you've got time to get your ducks in a row before the season starts. If Oklahoma comes back July 1, right, and they've got to work through some things to figure out exactly what's going on, I mean, you're out of time. Right, you're going to be starting right into some type of, like, we don't know what the fall training camp schedule is going to look like for the NCAA just yet, but you're out of time. You've got a tiny window where everything has to go perfectly according to plan, and if it doesn't, you've got no time to make up or change what you're doing.
The interesting thing for me is Oklahoma State's players, they're all going to be there together, right? And I assume they're going to test those guys. They're going to get those results. And if I know anything about those college football players, they're going to start doing stuff together on their own. Now, it's not going to be organized through Oklahoma State and the facility. They won't be able to probably to go lift in their weight room, but they're going to find a field to work out all together and start building that bond and building that camaraderie.
Tomorrow.
Ready to, yeah, exactly. And getting ready to go.
Probably May. They've probably already been doing it.
I don't know if you know this, but their head coach, he had a kid play at Stillwater High School. You think some of those players might end up on that field at Stillwater High School tomorrow? I'm just saying they're going to have a head start, which I think is a good thing. And I would not be surprised if, and it'll all be player driven, right? Because we all know that coaches would never influence anything like this.
Right.
but they're going to be doing stuff together. Spencer Sanders, he's already been driving back and forth. When I talked to him 10 days ago, he was in Owasso. They're throwing routes to his wide receivers.
Right.
That's what he was doing. That is what they are going to be doing in these 2 weeks of quarantine. They're going to be working.
That's why I saw Spencer Rattler throwing balls to all kinds of different players.
He's been posting videos for weeks, which, by the way, I got no problem with.
I don't either.
He looks good in the videos, by the way, but I'd rather it be to his receivers, Ted.
That's what I'm saying is
timing there.
No one has – I still haven't had anyone explain to me why it's safer for him to throw to random wide receivers in Arizona than it is to his guys on campus in a controlled environment where there's no one around. I still – and no one's answered that question, and I guess they're not going to. We'll just see what happens whenever we get here July 1st. I don't know. Just kind of how it is at this point.
And to further – so to your point, though the workouts start June 15th, just being there June 1, being around each other, we all agree. So, you're going to get some type of work done.
Hey, the intramural fields are open there at Oklahoma State. There's some big-ass fields there. They'll get some work in.
Their players aren't even coming back till June 28th, June 29th. Okay? Again, it's a virtual – and we don't know. There may be kids on campus right now. There may be guys living here. I'm not exactly sure everyone's status, but that's the other thing. They're not doing a 2-week on-campus quarantine like a lot of places are, because that is a good way to get them back, get them around each other, know they're not there doing something. Get them tested. And so, but really, most of these tests now, you can get most tests done in like an hour, right? I think a lot of these are going to be pretty quick. So I think once the Oklahoma kids get in, but to your point, Ted, then that's when the 2-week window starts. And now all of a sudden you're already you're already behind. And if you had to get further behind, it could be problematic. I'll just say this in closing. I'm still going to pick Oklahoma to win the Big 12 championship. So having said everything that we said there, okay, I still think Oklahoma, with or without, whether it's 2 weeks against Big 12 opponents or it's 3 weeks against their SEC foe, which I think is going to be a heck of a game. Tennessee's physical up front. We all agree, and I think we all think it does play a role. And in a perfect world, you'd love to see Oklahoma starting when the other places are. But I don't think it's going to be a factor that's going to change the way I feel about the outcome of the season.
Here's the only reason I feel like I for the most part, I agree with what you're saying. I still think Oklahoma's going to win the Big 12. And how much is it going to matter? I don't know. It's hard to say. But, I would say, in a typical year, if Oklahoma, for whatever reason, didn't report until July 1 and everyone else reported, 1st of July, 8th, or a couple of weeks earlier, I would say, well, that's not that big of a deal. But since in a year where you haven't done anything except for what they have 1-2 practices in the very beginning of March, unpadded. Yeah. Since you haven't done anything since the beginning of March, that's the only reason I'd say in this specific scenario, I do think that it's more than just missing 2 or 3 weeks.
Time is money.
I think it's because we're talking about a very small window. If you look at it, Dusty, you're the math guy. If most of the country is, we'll call it June 15th, and everyone's going to report we'll call it August 1. I know there's a little bit of difference there, but what percentage are you missing? You're missing is that 30%, close to it?
It's a quarter.
Yeah. So
a quarter. It's 2 months time, and you're taking. You're looking at 8 weeks.
It's
2 weeks
not.
out, it's a quarter.
This is the way I'll put it. It's not insignificant.
Exactly.
And OU, they've dominated, right? 5 in a row. Now, is that 25%? Is this what closes the gap and makes it one of the most interesting seasons we've seen in the Big 12 in recent history? Because that's one way of looking at it, Dusty.
I'll tell you this. This is just the way I'm kind of wired. If I was a leader in the locker room in Stillwater, I'd be talking about that.
Oh, for sure.
Hey, and they got a lot of talent coming back up there. As a matter of fact, I got them number 2 in the Big 12. If I'm not reminding them who's working in Stillwater and who's not in Norman, you're crazy. Same thing in Tennessee, boys. I'm not kidding you. I mean, that's a massive game, week number 2. And again, I don't know at the end of the day if it really matters or not, but it's something that I think you can use a bit of motivation.
We just need to fast forward to that OU Tennessee matchup, because that's the one we were all wondering, if this is going to affect it, because Tennessee, they got talent
up front, O-line, Gabriel.
Talent.
You're the O-line guru. They got some dudes, man. They got a couple of
that guard
players.
I mean, that guard he's one of the best in the country. So
well, how about this too? I mean, playing Tennessee, I think it's going to be a great game, just like you guys do. What's the one thing that you feel better about? It's at home. Well, I mean, how do we know what that home field advantage is going to look like? I mean, if you're talking about a 50% stadium, and I don't know, I still fully expect we're going to play in a sold-out stadium. But there are people that think you're going to play in a half-filled stadium, and that takes away from that home field advantage as well.
Yeah.
Did you see the statement from? Do you have that queued up by Mr. Weiberg there, Gabriel, the deputy athletic director at Oklahoma State? He kind of mentioned that on Friday.
They are playing in full go in Stillwater. I mean, that's their plan. He said they've looked at some other things a little bit, but right now their intention is to be 100% capacity there in Stillwater.
I was waiting on Ted there.
Yeah. In fairness, their full go is 50% usually.
Wow.
Right?
Hey, Iowa, same thing though. Kind of just
Iowa.
go outside of college football. Gary Barty, their AD, last week, he said something very similar. So I don't even know where I stand on that. I don't even know if anyone knows. But it seems like something that I would have said a month ago. There is no way in hell. It seems like that it's not out of the realm of possibility at this point.
Right. Now, the guys, the players are coming back to campus. Now they're going to start trickling in, and the voluntary workouts are going to begin, and the strength and conditioning work is going to get rolling. And there's still the NCAA, they extended the virtual meetings. So the guys are probably going to be working out together and then meeting virtually, which of course makes a ton of sense. Now we'll see if that gets adjusted, but now all of these football programs, you have to start planning what's next after this portion. And according to Yahoo Sports, Pete Thamel, the NCAA Football Oversight Committee sounds like it's going to recommend, because remember, recommending is the only power they actually have. They're going to recommend a 6-week preseason football camp model for this season. Now, supposedly the details are being worked out, and they'll probably come out this week. The schedule will be different for teams that are playing that August 29th game as opposed to the September 5th, but 6-week preseason football camp for college football. What does that exactly look like? That is the important question, because the term NFL style OTAs keeps getting floated out there for the first 2 weeks of that 6-week program. And there's kind of some differences in NFL style OTAs, because there's 3 phases in NFL style OTAs, where one phase is just strength and conditioning, and then the next phase is workouts on the field work, but the offense and defense stay separate. And then phase 3 of NFL OTAs is unpadded practice, no live contact, which is the biggest bullshit ever, because guys are just slamming into each other, not wearing pads, but because you can do 7-on-7 and 9-on-7 and 11-on-11.
Is there 15 actual OTA practices?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, Gabe, I don't know where I was anyway. In Chicago, Ted, I don't know how it was where you were. We had a off-season program but we had 15 actual OTAs. They were organized team activities, which were essentially spring practice with shells. That's how it was in Chicago, and it was 15 2-hour practices on
the
field.
rules, gentlemen, have changed. You can't wear pads at all. You can't wear shoulder
shells?
pads. No
shells.
shells.
No, I don't mean those.
Spider
I mean
pads.
Spiders.
Foamy.
Yeah,
spiders.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. So but now it's 10. 10 unpadded. They call them unpadded. You can wear the spiders, but no live contact. So when we're talking NFL style OTAs for the first 2 weeks of a 6-week program in college football, what version are we getting?
My guess it would be the phase 3 where you've got unpadded practices where you're on the field. I think what are OTAs? It's like you can't be out there longer than an hour and a half, right? And from stretch and you've got certain.
I thought it was 2 when we did it. No,
is it 2? That may be right.
That's what it used to be. I don't know.
I mean, I bet it's like that. It's going to be a shortened, unpadded practice that, you can still have walkthroughs and stuff before and after, and then still do strength and conditioning. Because under the current guidelines, obviously you wouldn't be able to get that in. No way you'd be able to do that and practice that long and keep those guys there that long. So I think it's going to be like a step down from training camp for a couple of weeks, and then probably step up to a closer to actual training camp for maybe an extended period, like 3 or 4 weeks.
I would. My guess. I mean, we're all speculating here, but I think if things go well with these openings, July 1 when Oklahoma's starting, I think then we'll see conferences, the NCAA open up even more. Is my guess. So then I think you could really get into some actual. I think we'll see starting in July, like 2 weeks of strength conditioning program. And then I think midway through July, we're going to see everybody go 2 weeks of OTAs. And I think just like Ted said, you keep your, you keep your strength conditioning going during the OTA process. And think about it. This is essentially a new substitute because there's no spring, right?
Spring's 15 practices,
that's
right?
So
Probably make that up here.
That's what this is. And, really, it's going to be like just a crash course for especially young guys.
It's going to be horrible.
It will be. It's going to be
awful.
That is, if I can go back to, if there is a silver lining, or if you want to look for some positive about when Oklahoma's starting, these people that are getting here June 1, by the time camp ends, you're going to be like, damn, get me out of here. But I think most places, once you get there, you're staying, right? You're not going anywhere. You're locked in. So if there is anything that does allow them, they'll be a little fresher. Maybe for at least the start of the season, it won't be such a grind on them in that regard. But I think that so you get those, and then you go right in once August starts, and you get your fall camp, and that's kind of what it's going to look like. And so it's a 6 weeks camp, but really those first 2 weeks, I think they can be extremely beneficial personally. And let's face it, they're going to be full-blown practices for the most part. There's going to be some walkthrough element. I think up front, it won't be quite as physical, but for a lot of the work they need, for the timing, for the quarterbacks, wide receivers, for young quarterbacks that haven't played, I think those 10 practices are huge, as opposed to stepping in right when camp starts, boom, month later, let's go play football. So it's going to be different, but I think that that's a smart approach. And 6 straight weeks of football, it should have these guys, pretty ready to go. And that's going to be also these coaches being smart with these players, right, guys? Yeah. Because they're going to get their asses worn out after 2 straight months of this stuff, and then you got to get ready for the season to start.
One of the things Gabe and I talked about, I think maybe as last week, is, if you're going to cram all this into 6 weeks, that's good. And I think it's going to be a good crash course, and those guys are going to have all the practice time they need for a season to get started. But if you have some guys, and especially with a really shortened strength and conditioning off season, you have guys out there that start getting injured, that have hamstrings and groins and calf muscles, and now you've missed 2 or 3 weeks of this really condensed practice time. That's going to cost you quite a bit. I mean, those guys are going to miss a bunch of very valuable time.
That's why the way that I would do it, and I know this is going to upset both of you, but in those first 2 weeks, this is what I would do. I would alternate unpadded practice and having afternoon film. So you'd have an unpadded practice, OTA style, offense, defense, the whole thing, as much time as you can. And then you bring your guys back in the afternoon, you watch the film, and then the next day you go through a strength and conditioning workout in the morning, and you do an offense and defense walkthrough, no helmets in the afternoon, and you alternate those, right? So you're getting an unpadded practice and film, and then the next day you're getting a really tough workout and a walkthrough, an easier walkthrough. And then you would get Sunday or something
The country
off.
club ain't happening, man. This is grind time, baby.
Yeah, and it's going to be great when you're grind timing and all your dudes are hurt. It's going to be great.
The training room?
Because you guys are assuming that these kids have been training at a high enough level, and some of them I'm sure have, guys, but we know some of the guys we played with, they're just not going to be in good enough shape. So I'm more worried about these guys knowing the concepts and maybe doing it at a slower speed and getting their bodies right. And yeah. I know that's not how you guys would do it. I know, because the way you're looking at me right now. But those first 2 weeks, you almost don't want to say ease them into it, but you don't just want to take the pedal to the floor and go full throttle and have a bunch of guys have a bunch of soft tissue injuries. I think that would be a mistake.
You've got 2 weeks before that, right, that you can assess your football team and figure out kind of what you're working with there. If you're Lincoln Riley, okay, and your strength conditioning staff comes to you and says, Coach White comes and says, man, they're just not ready. We're going to have to dial it back. Maybe. That's only if someone implores that upon you. Because to me, there's no substitute for being on the field, put in real life and as close to full speed situations as possible. And I don't know. To me, I hear what you're saying. And it's a delicate balance, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to be healthy. And, you know, when you're not on the field whatsoever for weeks at a time, that can be catastrophic. But, man, I would push it as far as I possibly could, because just to try to be that preventative when you're already that far behind,
you're still getting like
of the utmost importance. I don't know, man.
You're still getting, I think in that 2 weeks, what you would get something like 8 unpadded practices and then a walkthrough on every day. So you're getting tons of reps, but you got to make sure that when you kick off on September 5th, you got all your guys.
Yeah. Well, I think there's obviously got to be a balance between putting the guys in a meat grinder and then, or not going hard enough and having guys not prepared, not calloused, ready for the season. There's got to be a fine balance there. For me, I prefer to be on the field in short bursts where it is fast, where everything is at full speed, and then we get out. I hate whenever we've got an hour, we got 2 hour practice and, well, we got 30 more minutes. Let's just keep getting stuff in to get it in. I mean, I think during this time, if you cut it back, I don't think that that's necessarily a problem. If you're really making good, like you're getting good headway in all the things that you need to do in your limited amount of time, and it's really fast and it's really productive. Just to be out there going through, I mean, not that they do it, and you guys know that for the most part, everything is very productive at the Division I college football level. But, I mean, I would say I would trim back how long you're out there on the field on a given day. I'd have them out there on the field as much as I could every day. But, I mean, as far as daily, but I would probably limit the amount of time that they're actually on the field. But while we're there, we're getting it in.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah, and then you look, so if those are your 2 weeks of OTAs, then now you have to ask yourself, okay, what do these next 4 weeks of actual training camp look like? Because remember, what the rule is, you can only have, is it two a days? I mean, it's something.
I don't think you can do any of them at all.
Zero, homie. Zero.
Zero? There's zero. You can have like a walkthrough though in the afternoon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, yeah. You can have a walkthrough, but that's one practice. Walkthrough, we're not counting walkthroughs as practices.
So the interesting part becomes, how do you, because remember, you're not having the normal strength and conditioning lead up to this entire thing. So when you're practicing in training camp and you don't have these two-a-days and you've got these walkthroughs, do you ramp up the workouts more than you normally have in the past so that you continue to work on these guys' bodies while they're practicing, or is that too risky? I mean, is that something where, okay, maybe we're pushing them too much here in the month of August leading up to the season? I mean, these are questions that every staff across America is going to have to ask, like, how much do we push these guys and when do we dial it back? Like, can we just go full throttle or do we have to find this balance? And I think there's going to be a lot of coaches and strength and conditioning staffs that are going to have to adjust on the fly with this, because each team, each guy, I mean, it's going to be a difficult process. They've never been in this situation. And you guys know, everyone in the football world is the ultimate creature of habit. I mean, you're here at a certain time. You have this schedule. Everything's scheduled. No one has the schedule for this. No one's done this. So to think we know that, what these guys are going to do, what these staffs are going to do, I don't think they'll even know until they see how their guys are responding in August when they're going through camp.
Here's what I'll say. I agree with everything. You got to be smart. You got to have your guys ready. You've got to find a balance in there. But I will say this: as a freshman, I went through 17 straight days of full pad two-a-days with no day off, no unpadded practice. It was brutal as hell, and I know these guys can handle it. There's got to be a balance. You want all your guys healthy. You want them ready. These are the best athletes in the country. They can take quite a bit. So, I mean, there is the right balance there, and you've always got to, push it right to that edge without getting a bunch of guys banged up. But the team that gets it right, that's able to practice efficiently with a bunch of healthy players and know their system, and they're fast and they can hit and they're calloused for the season. I mean, that's going to be the team that wins the war this year. It's going to be a drawn out deal where, it's a season that we haven't had the preparation like this in the past. So everyone's going to be kind of guessing on it. And the team that gets it right is going to see the dividends pay off.
Ted and I played back in a different world 20 years ago, Ted. That was like a different time
It's crazy.
in training camp world. Because I remember, and y'all did win a national championship somehow after putting your body through 17 straight days of 2 days. And then the next year, what we did, it was something like 14 out of 16 days or something. Like, we had a couple of days off and then it started to taper. But
I think they changed the rules the next year where you could only do 2 a day, 1 a day.
That's right. Or it was like 2-1. I think we 2-1 for a while or something like that. But I totally agree with Ted. Like, what I would say is a lot of these places, you have a base to go off of, because from a time standpoint, training camp's going to be the same. Like, to me, I know it's a 6-week training camp, but to me, it's kind of like you put it in sections. You got 2 weeks to start July that you really got your workouts if all these things pass. 2 weeks of your OTAs, you're gearing up, and then training camp. Then you got a month-long training camp. And I would go, I would go based off of what's been working for you. The part that I think could possibly change is with the strength part, depending on, like you said, Gabe, where guys are. And I do think what you said is right. If you're a good strength coach, I think you're really going to look at it, and I think that you're going to not have a blanket thing for everyone, but it's really going to be custom fit for different guys, because you don't know where everybody's been, and you're going to start to figure out, okay, this is how serious he took it. So you may have from the weight standpoint a little bit different and have their workout slightly tweaked. But I think as far as on the field football, Ted, you've got these formulas in place and they've been working for you for a while. I wouldn't go making drastic changes to anything like that.
No, I agree. My final thought on it about the injury thing is you don't want your guys injured, and you don't want overuse injuries. You don't want soft tissue injuries, but there's a fine line. And Dusty, I always talk about this. Guys have to be calloused. and you have to be able to take a beating. Your body has to be able to take a beating, and that's why you have to. There's a balance of having a training camp where guys are fresh and moving fast and things look good. You got guys healthy, and then being too brutal where guys are banged up. You've got shoulders. You've got guys that are missing time because of taking injuries, taking shots. But the body has to get used to it. It's a brutal season that lasts forever. And you got to get these guys calloused. You can't take it too easy, or you're just going to be pushing the injuries from training camp into the season.
That's right.
You have to make them feel as miserable as they're going to feel in early November. Yeah, you just have to. Calloused is an interesting way of putting it, but Ted, I know exactly what you mean.
We've been saying that for a decade, Ted. I think it's the best way to put it. You really do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to
mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually.
You have to show your body. You have to kind of break your body down and say, all right, baby, this is what you're in for the next 4 months. Saddle up, partner. And I mean, it sounds crazy to probably some, but I don't know, man. That's
there's
kind of
a reason why 9-on-7, the third day of training camp, whenever you're in full pads, is brutal and everyone's going as hard as they can, and the next day you wake up and it's like, what in the hell happened to my body?
I have been hit by a bus.
Right. And then but you fast forward 2 weeks later into the season, you're doing the same 9-on-7 and it's as brutal as ever, and guys are just smashing each other out there, but you walk away okay, and you feel a little bit better the next day than you did back.
How many Advil you popping by week 2 in training camp?
It sounds
what
bad,
is that,
but
5 Advil?
Okay. You just have to get your body ready for the trauma that it's going to go through. I know that sounds kind of drastic, but that's the truth. All right, boys. The other big story from the weekend in the world of college football. The Power 5 commissioners, they took it upon themselves to send a nice little letter to Congress about name, image, and likeness, asking for national legislation that would eliminate state-by-state rules, which they think could put some schools at a disadvantage. I think we all saw this coming. They want a blanket rule for every school so they don't have to deal with 50 different rules. And they mentioned some things that they want, some suggestions to our fine legislatures there in Washington, D.C. And these were their recommendations. They want schools to be unable to pay for players' name, image, and likeness endorsements. And it sounds like they want that to apply to sponsors of the athletic programs as well. Okay, sure. They want a term of academic progress before a student athlete can start making money off their name, image, and likeness. They want players to be prevented from endorsing tobacco, alcohol, gaming, things of that nature that they maybe think go against the values of college athletics. And they want players to have to disclose their name, image, and likeness contracts publicly and say who their agents are. They are trying. They're trying their best. And they said, hey, time is of the essence because we got all these states that are about to pass their own laws. So please, we know you're busy there in Washington, D.C. with the coronavirus and these protests, but can you get our name, image, and likeness thing figured out? Please.
I'm going to jump in here real quick, Ted. Am I something wrong here? Why do we need federal legislation for this?
You don't?
Because they don't want each state to have their own rule because they think it's a recruiting advantage.
Why doesn't the NCAA, who's the governing body, why don't they just put a rule in? Why do we need to get federal and or state governments involved here?
Because they've already been bullied by state governments. They've been bullied by California and Florida.
But then they gave in, though. So that's what I'm saying. Why don't they just step up?
Who gave in?
the NCAA, they're looking at it. They're going to vote upon it, right? They're going to allow it. Now all they have to do is put some rules in place. That's what I'm asking is why can't they set the regulations? Why are we asking the government to do it? I mean, seriously. And right now, of all times, they've got a gajillion other things that they need to worry about than this. Or am I missing something?
No. I totally know what you mean, but I think the Power 5 commissioners see it playing out this way. The NCAA comes with their recommendations and their structure, and they present it and say, hey, these are the rules. And then a bunch of state governments go, no, not good enough. And they proceed with the legislation they're pushing through their state. And then all of a sudden, you've got different rules in each state. And that's why they wrote a letter to, Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi. I mean, they realize they need to get the federal government involved because they don't think, and their assumption is correct, the NCAA is not going to influence these state legislatures because the NCAA has got a horrible reputation with these people. And they're going to say, nope, not good enough. And they're going to push what they want to push through in their state
really,
legislature.
It's the Power 5 conferences. I mean, honestly, I say the NCAA, they don't really do much. It's the Power 5 conferences. That's what we're really talking about here. And so, I don't know. I hear what you're saying. And I know you want to talk about more so the items that they mentioned more than should it be the federal or state government. I'm just saying if there was a way to keep the government out of it, I wish they could do that. I guess that's my bigger point here.
Well, and here's the thing. It's none of the government's damn business how these kids make their money. It has nothing to do with the federal government. It has nothing to do with the state government. It has everything to do with the NCAA. We're not like the laws that California passed and then what Florida went and did it. Those laws are meaningless. We're talking about whether you are eligible in amateur athletics. Okay. And that is decided by the NCAA. So if the NCAA wants to change their guidelines as to what they're going to say the players are going to be able to remain eligible with, they need to issue that. The reason they're going to state or federal governments is to try and get to decide this thing in the court of public opinion. They feel like they're going to get a bunch of people behind it that say, well, there's no way these kids should be able to make any. All of that really is meaningless. If the NCAA wants these rules, they need to put those rules in there. Now,
what do you think it says about the NCAA's approach that their Power 5 commissioners are writing letters to Congress going, hey, can you go ahead and just do something and not wait on the NCAA to do something? There's clearly a disconnect there.
Here's the problem if you get the federal government involved. So the federal government is going to write legislation that says a kid that's in school is able to make money on an endorsement deal, but it's only after he has a term of school, or it's only if it's a organization that we agree with. It can't be alcohol, it can't be tobacco, and it can't be casinos. They're going to segment out one little bit of the population from the rest of us. That's not what the federal government does.
It's not going to happen. I can't imagine it happening.
No, this should have nothing to do with the federal government. This is about like whenever they marched in front of the Senate or the Congress, Major League Baseball, to have their steroid, deal. It's like, what are we talking about here? Why is the federal government even wasting their time with this crap?
Well, I think in that instance, they tried to say for the children of America, for the steroids. Anyway, I think it's going to be interesting. Again, that's why I just started with saying, if there's a way to keep the government out of it, I would love to see it. I hear what you're saying, Gabe. It's very fascinating that the Power 5 commissioners, which really run college football, that they're going to the federal government instead of who is really the house that they sleep in, the NCAA, and they're basically saying, we don't want to mess with you. But I do feel like it gets pretty hairy once we start asking the government to step in and kind of tell everybody what to do. So as far as what they said in there, I don't think that some of those things are out of question. I find it odd that they put alcohol, yet we're seeing universities with big time money deals
Bud Light, baby.
with
What?
beer distributors. So how is it that the schools can make money off the beer, but if a kid's 21 years old, he can't make money off of them? How does that even make sense?
I mean, and that goes to like, can a kid, and you see this with pro athletes all the time, right? A player shows up for a club night, right? I mean, they put their face on the poster and they end up getting a cut of, whatever's made at the door, or however you want to make that deal. I mean, you could do that with college football players at bars and clubs in the college towns across America. Like, what's wrong with that? Who cares? What is that against the values of the Power Five, the values of the NCAA? College kids drink. Everyone knows it. It's the dumbest shit ever to pretend that these kids don't drink. Like, I didn't understand that. I was like, alcohol? I mean, really? Everyone sells beer at games now. Like, it's not a big deal. What are we doing?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I see all of these things, and I think they're all putting them out there for the right reasons, right? They don't want the universities to be sponsoring their own players for a huge amount of money, right? That
makes sense. That one makes sense.
They want some academic progress, right? They want these guys to come to school. I mean, there's a reason that they're trying to get these guys to show up and graduate and be prepared, because we all know the percentages. It's less than 1% of even college football players are going to go on and play in the professional league. So they still want these guys to come get their education. That all makes sense. The tobacco, alcohol, I mean, all of these things make a lot of sense. But if you start getting the federal government involved, that's whenever all this stuff has to go away. I mean, that's what's weird about it.
Yeah, I think the term's put in place because so you don't have people getting deals done before they even get there, basically meaning for recruiting, right? That's a way to try to at least mask it, that there's deals that were already in place, and this guy's going to go ahead and have an endorsement deal before he steps on campus. It may be in place, but they're saying, well, at least go for a term, a semester. What's interesting is that a summer semester is that I'm guessing if you go early, it's that first, winter then spring semester that you're going to have, and then all of a sudden once you hit the summer, I guess now you can start
do an intercession session as a high school
Right.
kid before you even go to that first spring semester as the early arrival.
I would want to know what a term is, but I think that's what that is put in for as much as anything, is to at least have it out there, make one layer tougher for it to be a direct reason or an enticement to come to a university potentially. And then as far as the agent goes, I'm fine with that. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, if they want somebody, because there's going to be contracts involved, they need somebody that knows what they're doing. So I don't have any problem with that. And what I don't know why did it say it had to be made public or just be known to them? I don't think that we all need to know in the public these people's dealings and what their deals look like. If the schools need to know for their own well-being so that they can oversee it, I'm fine with that. I don't want to know what these kids are making, and I don't think everybody should get to know. So I hope that when that last one you said there, Gabe, I hope that that's not something that we're all going to find out about.
Yeah,
we don't know about everybody's endorsement deal that's out there as it is right now, and quite frankly, I don't think we should know.
I would assume when they say they want those things disclosed, that it would just be between the kids and the university, or at least that's what I would hope. I don't think you would want a bunch of college kids knowing how much a student athlete is making. It really could. It could put some guys in some bad situations. I do think that there's no way they'll have to disclose that publicly, like as in releasing their tax returns or anything like that. That'll never happen. But I got no problem with them having to let you know who the agent is. That's fine. That's the way it is with every NFL guy. It's no big deal. So I just thought it was really interesting that the Power Five, they went straight to the big boys in Congress. I was like, okay, all right, I guess it's getting serious.
We'll see where it goes. I mean, I think there's some good stuff here, and I do think there needs to be a way to regulate it and have a little bit of guidelines as to what exactly needs to occur. This is why it's such a strange road to go down, because you're either amateur or you're not. And if you're going to say that you're not,
the first part of the letter is like, just a reminder, these guys are not employees. These student athletes,
right.
They are not employees. They're students.
I mean, that's the thing to me. It's like either you're an amateur and you can't make money off of this stuff, or you're not. That's why it's a weird mix here. It's like, we're going to allow you to not be an amateur, but you can only make money based off of what we think you can make and where you can make it. That's kind of the weird juggling act for me right now.
Yeah, but there is a lot going on in college football. And Dusty, it was so good having you back, buddy. Thank you for your time. You're so generous.
Great to be back. I appreciate you guys allowing the guest seat to be open for me. So I have seen some of the guests you've had. Well done, boys. Keep up the good work. And if you'll have me back at some point in the future, maybe I could come back and be a guest on this fantastic podcast.
I think we can make that happen. Thanks, big guy.
Yeah. Can you just remind all the people? I'll just tell them, by the way, tonight, well, it'd be last night. I hope you're watching. I'll be on the Oklahoma Sports Blitz with Dean Blevins, John Holcomb. That's on News 9 in Oklahoma City. If you're in Tulsa, that's News on 6, I believe. You can also check me out Monday through Friday, 11 to 2 on WWLS, the Sports Animal. It is the Monsters of the Midday. So thank you, Gabriel, for allowing me a shameless plug there.
You done?
You think it may not matter, but I can assure you.
What's your Twitter handle?
Matters.
Come on, what's your
Twitter handle?
Hey,
what's your Instagram, Facebook? Just get it all out there, bud.
At Dusty Dvoracek. And let me just say, I don't know what's going on, but maybe I've done something evil. My followers are dwindling like the last several days. Does that mean like there's bots that are getting cut out of my life? What's going on? Or people just all of a sudden decide not to like me?
People saw that you left the podcast and they're like, see you, dude.
Peace, man. All right, boys. Good chatting with you.
All right. See you, Dusty. See you. Always a pleasure having Dusty on with us, Ted, but let's get to some segments. And since it's Monday, you're gonna have a couple football guys talking basketball, and there's stuff happening. Things are happening. Adam Silver had a meeting with the NBA owners, and according to Woj, they are going to vote this Thursday, it seems, to approve a plan to bring 22 teams back to Disney's ESPN Wild World of Sports in Orlando. And it sounds like the target start date is July 31st. I'm not so sure why it's so late. Maybe they just want to be really, really thorough, I guess. And they still need to get some sort of mini training camp in. I assume they're going to do it in the cities that the teams are located. I know some teams have talked about, hey, let's just go straight to Florida and let's do it there. But the 22 teams, that means that all the teams that are within 6 games of the final spot for the playoffs are going to be in Orlando in that format. That's 5 from the Western Conference and then 1 team from the Eastern Conference. Now, it sounds like they're definitely going to play some regular season games because, frankly, that's what the players want. They've made it very obvious. They want to be able to tune up a little bit instead of just going straight into the playoffs or straight into some sort of pool play with big implications. They want to get their legs underneath them, and that's understandable with this big layoff. But it also makes a lot of sense because that allows you to maximize the amount of money you make by putting these games on TV. And I know they're not going to be high stakes games, but hell, maybe some really clutch games break out in the Western Conference playoff race, and you do draw some really good ratings. But also, there's not really anything on, but who knows what will be on by the end of July. Now, you got to remember, this has a lot to do with them fulfilling those regional sport network contracts and getting all those dollars in and making sure that they don't come after the NBA. Those RSNs don't come after the NBA for that money. So I'm just curious what the teams that are not coming are going to do, kind of. But I'm just excited because clearly the Oklahoma City Thunder will be there because they are firmly in the Western Conference playoff picture. And all signs point to the NBA coming back in this season, getting finished out in a somewhat normal way, Ted.
I love that they're coming back. I love that we're going to have NBA. I love that they're going to play some games before we get to a playoff format. I love all of that. But you want me to point out what's stupid about all this? There's a couple of things.
22?
Well, that's a weird number, but more so for me, it's the July 31st at the Wild World of Sports at Disney. Like Disney World is supposed to open before that. So it's like you're not going to be alone at Disney World. There's going to be people out and about intermingling at Disney World. Like this format would have made sense if they would have started it May 1st. But they're going to send NBA players basically into a quarantine type of world to play basketball when by that time, my guess is the whole world or the U.S. for the most part is going to be open for business. So that's the weird timing part of it.
You would assume they're going to block off an entire area of the Wild World of Sports, right? Because the Wild World of Sports, it's adjacent, right, to Disney World there in Orlando. If I remember correctly, I think I played in an AAU Nationals there in Orlando at the Wild World of Sports way back in the day. And it's not like it's within the park, if that makes sense. So it's a separate property and a separate setup. Now, close, but I think you can still have Disney World doing their entire thing and have the Wild World of Sports completely separated from that. But then you talk about the staff and all the it's just there are going to be a lot of people around.
I get that, but the point is like Disney World is opening up and they're going to have like visitors and vacationists and tourists coming through while you're sending an NBA team, and they're going to be separate. I get that, but that's what I'm saying. Like the timing doesn't make any sense. Like everyone else is opening up and then they're sending the NBA guys into lockdown. That's just a weird thing for me. And they're starting July 1st. You know, everyone for the most part, especially around here, I know some places are different, but like the days of nothing being on and everyone is stuck inside their house 24/7 looking for some sports are kind of like, those are kind of gone. More and more people are out of quarantine. So
lots of German soccer, lots of NASCAR, baby.
It's just like there was a time where I would have been tuned in at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday morning watching a random NBA regular season game played in front of no fans. Like I would have been like locked in for that.
Why isn't it July 1st? Why is it July 31st? Like, I mean, they can't plan it out the entire month of June.
That's 2 months away. And that's what I'm saying is like by that time, like the numbers are already going down drastically across the country, and it's a good thing. But I don't know, the timing deal just seems so strange to me. Like July 31st, that's a long time from now.
And remember, this is all off, reporting from Woj and Shams, but those guys rarely get it wrong. So I mean, July 31st.
That's almost as far away as like whenever the game was canceled at Oklahoma City. Like this is 60 days away, 60 plus days away. And you go 60 days back and we're talking about, late March, early April, which I mean, we're missing a couple of weeks in there, but
do you think maybe the players said, hey, we need time. Like we need time to get our bodies right before we go there, we quarantine. And I know that There's reports now that they're going to be able to bring family members, and that makes a ton of sense to me, right? These are who these people have been spending time with anyways. Why wouldn't they be able to come? But part of me thinks that this is player driven, and the power the players have there in the NBA.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if, and it may have been Chris Paul, right? President of the Players Association, that was going, you know what? Hey, we need a month to get tuned up. And it seems drastic under the circumstances, but if you're looking at it from the perspective of a NBA player, they don't want to rush it and come back and get hurt or anything like that and have something bad happen. So I don't know, but July 31st, that is a long time away.
Here's another thing too. July 31st, what does that give the guys time to do? Time to kind of be off, have what I guess would be their true off season, because if you start July 31st, the next year's season, the 2020-2021 season, usually starts in October, Gabe? Middle of October?
We've talked about it. That thing's going to start Christmas Day.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying, though, is like if you start July 31st and you're going to play some regular season games and then you're going to play some playoff season games, I mean, you're talking about, depending on how they schedule the thing, they're not going to finish the playoffs we're not talking about finishing by September. This thing's going to be finishing by October.
Yeah.
Or
it's going to finish. Yeah. And that's the projected finish date. It's going to finish in the first couple of weeks of October. So
they're going to be rolling. Even if you just finish in the first couple of weeks of October, and they start the next season at Christmas, you're going to be rolling. A little bit of time off and rolling right back into it for the guys, obviously, that make it to the finals or semifinals.
Talk about an extended vacation for the guys that are on the shitty teams in the
No
NBA.
Doubt. Sometimes it pays off, right?
I don't think they're going to lose out on much pay.
Dude, they peaced out right away.
They're living right. They're living right there in the Bay Area, I'm sure. But all right, Ted, let's move on to our winners and losers of the weekend. Like our guy Toby Keith says, we got winners, we got losers. Who you got as your winner of the weekend?
It's got to be, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, but it's got to be college football fans. With the amount of teams that are about to come back, right? We're right there on the precipice. People are going to start to come back. Some already have. In the next 2 weeks, almost everyone in the country is going to be back on their campus. That's a positive for college football. We've heard a couple of guys, a couple of universities talk about they're gearing up to play in front of full stadiums. And the other part of it, you look at some of the numbers in the United States for the coronavirus. It's dipping really good. If you're a college football fan right now, as we start off the month of June, things are looking fantastic for the season to not only start on time, but there's a chance you may start on time and be kicking off in front of a full stadium of fans. Things right now look far better than they ever have for college football playing a normal regular season.
Yeah. And I have had a very cautiously optimistic approach to this. And I'm getting a little worried that I'm starting to get just plain optimistic about it.
Buying it too much. Don't do it yet.
This is what the coronavirus wants me to think, Teddy. It's got us right where it wants us.
Massive disappointment.
No, but I'm with you. It's really gaining steam and it makes me excited. But then there's that small part of me that goes, just calm down. There's still a long way to go between now and September 5th or now and August 29th when some teams are kicking off. But yeah, I'm starting to get excited and I'm scared. I'm scared that I'm starting to get excited, but it's a lot more fun than not being excited. So I'm with you. Who'd you have as your loser of the weekend?
My loser of the weekend is the dude with the bow and arrow at the protest. Did you see this?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's so many angles as to why this is horrible. Obviously, you don't want to shoot a bow and arrow into a crowd of people, okay?
That is frowned upon.
But if you're going to have a weapon of choice, that is a horrible way to go, because it went, if you haven't seen it, it went exactly how you imagine it would. The guy spins his first round of an arrow and it skips, aimlessly, doesn't hit anyone, thank God. But before he can grab arrow number 2, yeah, you guessed it, pummeled by the crowd and his weapon taken from him.
He couldn't get it out of the quiver.
I mean, I did feel like I was watching a bad episode of Robin Hood or something, where I thought that was hilarious,
An
scary,
old school approach.
an old school approach. I don't know. That guy was
What
the weekend.
What made you laugh more, seeing that guy or seeing what appeared to be the lady that looted the Cheesecake Factory in Seattle and walked out with an entire cheesecake? That was unbelievable. That's one of the funniest fucking things I've ever seen. I was dying, and I know the protests aren't funny. But like these two instances, like if you can't laugh about them, come on, guys.
The funniest part of the cheesecake thing to me was I don't know what news station it was on. I watched the clip on Twitter, and I think it was CNN, but I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it was even a local station, not sure. But the anchor says, Cheesecake Factory's been, the windows broken out, it's been looted. And then you see the girl with the cheesecake walking in front, and she says, and there's a girl with a full cheesecake. Unclear where that came from.
What?
What?
I've got a guess.
Well, unclear where the cheesecake came from. I thought that was hilarious.
I don't understand. Just grab a box for the cheesecake. I mean, the boxes are right there. Anyone that's ever been to a Cheesecake Factory, I mean, I know you're looting and you're probably in a hurry, but I mean, I'm sure there was other people. Just grab a box. Protect that cheesecake.
Do you go find a safe place to set it down and go back for more cheesecake, or raid the freezers, or do you just go sit down and enjoy? How does that usually work? I have no idea.
I would assume, I've never looted, but I would assume that you're trying to protect the cheesecake at all costs at that point, because people are probably eyeing that cheesecake going, where'd you get that? You better share that before I take it from you. I mean, it didn't look like the most physically imposing human being walking away with that cheesecake. You got to be careful in those crowds.
Yeah, well, it's strange. For whatever reason, when I grocery shop, I'm overly protective of my cart, like someone's going to take it. Like someone showed up and wanted the exact same items that I was going for.
And they're just going to steal the cart?
Yeah, I don't know. I've got this
odd fear.
I'm always like looking back and checking my six, make sure no one's going to take my cart. So I can imagine in the middle of a riot and a loot, that when people are going crazy stealing stuff, that weird fear I have would be kicked into overdrive, and I'd be high and tight with the cheesecake, eagle claw on it.
I don't think anyone would want to mess with you in the looting process, if I had to guess, because I know you would come strapped. I know how you roll when it comes to that stuff. But
possibly. Here's the other thing. If I'm going to loot, I'm going to be, if I'm risking spending time in prison, I'm not going to prison over a cheesecake. Okay.
No.
If I'm going to loot, I'm being very selective of where and what I'm looting.
Flat screen TV, screen, big one, 80-incher, at least, like you are hopping out of that thing, getting it through the doorway. All right. Now my winner of the weekend has some local flavor to it. And this is the story I read in the Oklahoman. So James Strayhorn is the cross-country coach at Edmond North. And last week, he became the first person to run across Oklahoma north to south. So he went from Kansas to Texas. Now, I don't know if there's someone that believes less in long distance running than me. I am a huge critic of it. I think it's stupid, Teddy.
That's why I was shocked. I thought this was a misprint. You meant to put him as your loser of the weekend.
No. But so he goes 265 miles, right, from Kansas to Texas. So he goes all the way across the beautiful state of Oklahoma. And the part where I was like, oh, this guy, he seems incredible. They report that he was fueling himself with a high carb diet, which makes sense. So I'm thinking, oh, he's going brown rice. You know, he's doing it right. No. My man was eating honey buns and gas station peanuts. Now, I like to imagine that those peanuts came from a Love's. You know, I like to imagine that because it seems like James Strayhorn is a good guy and he would get his peanuts at Love's if he's going to stop at a gas station. But over the 4 days, he did this in 4 days. So he started on Monday. He finished on Thursday. On Thursday, Teddy, he ran 75 miles from Pauls Valley to the Texas border. What? Who does this? I mean, but the reason he's my winner of the weekend is if my man is eating that stuff while he's running, can you imagine the feast he is having this weekend? I can only imagine. He is probably having one of the best eating weekends on planet Earth.
Here's the thing with me. I love honey buns. And
they're delicious.
I love gas station peanuts. Typically, if I'm going in there, I'm grabbing at least 2 or 3 peanuts. Now, here's the thing. I'm just not sure that honey buns and peanuts are the thing that you really want to put in your stomach whenever I mean, apparently they are, but for me.
Gas in the tank, baby. Gas in the tank.
I would be sprinting to the next gas station, if you know what I mean, is what I'm saying. Like that, they don't necessarily agree with my stomach very well.
You love them, but let's just say that the honey buns have consequences.
That's right. Hey man, 75 miles in a day, that is an unbelievable feat.
You know what that is.
How far he'd already gone in what the day or two previous, unreal.
And congratulations to him, record holder, right? But yeah, running that far, stupid. It's just dumb. I don't believe in it. I disagree with that method, but hey, good for him.
I can't even imagine what his hips, knees, and feet feel like from all of that. That to me just sounds like the worst thing ever.
They feel worse than they should because you shouldn't run that far. It's bad for you. That's just my thinking. That's me. Now, my loser of the week, and I don't want to get too heavy and serious. You know, we've done a good job this episode of staying on the course talking about sports, but my loser of the weekend are college football coaches that did not make a statement about George Floyd's death. Now, I know that college football coaches are in an interesting position, right? You are responsible for all these kids, past, present, and future. The majority of them are Black, but you're also the face of a big-time business and enterprise when you talk about the football program and your university. I mean, most of the coaches are the face of the university. But why would you not say something? I mean, when you look across college football, and just take OU's roster, for example. OU's roster is roughly 70% Black. I mean, you can go look at the roster pictures and yeah, you'll find it's always around 70% Black athletes. And I just don't understand how a college coach could be responsible for those kids and watch what happened and watch the reaction of the country and watch the reaction of your players on social media and not say a word. I don't understand it. I think to those coaches, that didn't say a word, I think it's going to be used against him. I do, and I'm glad the coaches in the state of Oklahoma said something. I'm glad Lincoln Riley and several OU assistants said something. I'm glad Mike Gundy came out with the statement. Because it's important, man. I mean, it's important. I will never know what it's like to be black. I'll never know. I'll never be able to understand. But just showing that support publicly, when you know that your players, whether it's players that played for you in the past or they're playing for you now or kids you're recruiting, you know those kids are distressed right now. You know that they're emotional. You know that they are deeply affected by what's going on right now. I just can't imagine why you would think staying silent is a good idea. I like, all you have to do is come out and denounce racism. That's not hard. That's not a difficult thing to do. Now, you don't have to come out and, say, hey, I support everyone destroying these businesses and looting. Like, you don't have to say that. But to say nothing, I think it says a lot about the coaches that said nothing. And there was a lot of coaches that spoke up and said something. I don't want to make it sound like a lot of coaches didn't, but to the ones that didn't, I mean, what are you doing? I mean, you say you care about these kids, you care about your players, and then you sit silent when something like this is going on. It just doesn't make sense to me, Teddy.
Yeah, here's the only thing that I'll say to that. I agree with you 100%. Here's the one thing I'll say. Just because a coach didn't put out a statement on social media doesn't mean that he hasn't called his players individually and asked how they're doing, told them that he is with them, told them, all the things that everyone has said on social media. Because personally, to me, that means more than
I'm with you there for sure.
A statement put out there on social media. So the only caveat, everything you said, I agree with. The only thing is, my guess is there are some coaches that have said something privately to their players and maybe haven't posted anything. But if a coach hasn't at least, talked to his players, checked in on them, see how they're doing, told them his thoughts as to what's going on, and all the different things that we know. You got to check. You at least have to check in with your players and tell them individually your thoughts and ask how they're doing.
And you just got to call it how you see it. There were a couple of OU guys that were not happy that the guys on that staff hadn't said anything yet, and a bunch of them came out and said something. But I don't understand.
Well, I mean,
I don't understand those college coaches that just have sat and said nothing. It doesn't make sense to me.
That's another point of it is, some players, some different. I mean, there was players locally, NFL guys across the country that have kind of said similar things about, if you're not speaking up right now, it says everything that we need to know about you. If someone says that, and then you come out and issue has the time already passed at that point?
Then does it look like, oh, you only said something because you got pressured? That's
right.
That's why I always think when something like that, and this doesn't happen very often, right? When you talk about this type of reaction publicly, but I think it's always best to get out in front of it and to, be ahead of the game on this type of thing. That's just how I feel, and I don't understand why some coaches just didn't come out and say racism's bad. That shouldn't be a difficult thing to say. All right, Ted, let's finish it like usual, and that's with Keeping It Local, where we highlight something going on in the great state of Oklahoma, and unfortunately, this version of Keeping It Local is highlighting something that is not going on that normally would be going on right now, and that is the Women's College World Series. It should have started on Thursday. It is such a fun and important event for Oklahoma City and for the entire state of Oklahoma. I mean, they had just expanded the stadium. It had been renovated. It looks great. I think they've got the capacity about 13,000 now. And Jason Kersey, friend of the show, friend of ours, wrote a great article in The Athletic about it, saying that they were expecting about $24 million for the city for this year's Women's College World Series due to the expansion, and it's not happening. And it sucks because it's an event I really enjoy. It's an event that a lot of Oklahomans really enjoy, especially now. I mean, OU's been going and going and going, right? But Kenny Gajewski, he's got Oklahoma State softball rolling, and I think it's just an event that the entire state gets excited about. I mean, you look at last year, over 78,000 people attended over the course of the 15 games, and something like 70% or so come from out of town. So it's huge for, bars, restaurants, hotels, the museums around Oklahoma City, and none of it happened. And it just sucks. The coronavirus is the worst.
Yeah, it's been brutal. It really has. And I got to tell you, man, something that I never thought that I would get into would be the Women's College World Series. But the more I've watched it, the more I've grown to appreciate it and love it. And around here in the summer, it's so funny because we have like the friends and neighbors come over during the weekends to hang out at the pool. And there's always golf on, or not this year, but usually there's some type of sports going on. And it's just it's either on or it's really not an issue. There's never like can't miss stuff. But when the Women's College World Series is on, it never fails that as soon as people walk into the backyard, what's the score? Who's playing? It's like we're all glued to the TV every single year. And the tournament's fantastic. The play is fantastic. Great pitching, great hitting, great fielding. The games are quick. They're action-packed. The crowds are always great and always into it. I mean, I would say that softball, it doesn't have the biggest fan base in all of college sports. Basketball, football, obviously, are bigger. But, dude, the softball fans are diehards, and they are into it, and they follow their teams all across the country. It's awesome. I wish it was going on this year, but I'll tell you what, I'm glad the renovations happened. And Oklahoma City, a year from now, is going to be even better whenever all of the people show up to watch the World Series. Because year by year, Oklahoma City is becoming a place that you have to see.
And I imagine that, like you said, those diehard softball fans, some of the most passionate fans in any sport, they are going to have that place rocking next year.
13,000, dude. That's a big amount of people to watch a softball game.
I mean, they had like 9,800 and some change at one of them last year. I mean, there's some big time crowds at Hall of Fame Stadium.
It's interesting because the softball fields are so much smaller. So I mean, those people are just going to be packed in on top. That's awesome. Can't wait.
Yeah. All right, let's finish with a Twitter question or two. The first one, Teddy, comes from Jackson Moore at Jackson Moore 1 on Twitter. And he says, what restaurant/bar in the OKC Norman area do you wish was still open? I'm going first. This is so easy for me. There used to be a place on Campus Corner, my first couple years in college, when I was in a weight gain phase, mind you, going from tight end to offensive line. There was a place called Fat Sandwich. And Fat Sandwich was the ultimate drunk food place. They would put whatever on a sandwich, on like this big hoagie roll, right? And I do mean whatever. You could go, I used to get one that was like, it'd be like hamburger patty, cheese, obviously, so like a cheeseburger, and then chicken fingers and mozzarella sticks with ranch and French fries on a sandwich, Ted. And it was called Fat Sandwich. It was very, very well named.
Well, hey, I'm telling you, are the food guy. If you sign off on it, then I'm thumbs up. It's that wasn't there that I know of whenever I played, but that sounds like my kind of place.
It was spectacular. And shout out to Justin Chasen. He was the one that would always go pick us up Fat Sandwich. I mean, he loved it. I loved it.
Now, did you order the same thing every single time?
No. They had a list of different fat sandwiches. They were all called like the fat something, right?
Yeah.
And they were different variations. There, a lot of them had cheesesteak on it and stuff like that. Oh, it was so bad for me, but so damn good. And it was right there on Campus Corner. So late night, late Saturday, I'm going to Fat Sandwich. Of course I'm going to Fat Sandwich. Duh.
Thank God they didn't have Uber Eats and Postmates whenever you're in college. You may have problems.
Oh, I would have been 320 instead of 300. Can you think of one? Can you think of one that's kind of, gone away?
So a million years ago, whenever I was at OU, the bar to go to was Brothers. Do you remember? It was that there?
Oh yeah. It may still be there now. I don't know if
I guess I could be wrong, but I thought that it had finally shut down. But
R.I.P. to Brothers.
It went through a couple of phases. Like
$5 pitchers during the summer. Let's go.
In 2000, like my freshman year, I heard. I wasn't old enough to get in, but I heard that it was slamming that year. And then
I think the statute of limitations is over. I think you could say you went to Brothers when you were 18 back in the year 2000.
Thank God that Oklahoma had the best ID situation of every state in the union at one point whenever we were still doing laminated licenses, but that's a topic for another day. But Brothers was like the place to be in 2000 and 2001. Then it kind of phased out a little bit, and then it kind of came back. You know how it is, things get trendy, but it was always a place that was really cool. Loved the atmosphere there. It was a good place to go hang out, good food. So Brothers would be mine.
Is Brothers really? It's not there anymore.
I don't know. I'm checking right now.
It was right by that Hideaway there.
Yeah,
Campus Corner. I have no idea. I'm too old now, I believe, to go to Brothers. But yeah, no, we spent a lot of time there my freshman year.
Well, maybe it is still there.
Maybe it is. Well, you know what we're doing this season? Me and you,
we're
pal.
Going to Brothers, baby.
We are going to Brothers, brother.
It says it is still there. All right. Well, hey, that's fantastic news. How about
we're going? Let's one of those 11 a.m. There's inevitably going to be an 11 a.m. kickoff, and we're going to Brothers afterwards, bud.
Let's do it. I'm in.
All right. Episode 12 in the books, Ted. Man, these are flying by, buddy.
Flying by. We've done 12. It doesn't feel like it, but it was good to have Dusty back on. That was fun.
That was fun.
College football.
Yeah, and I know a lot's going on out there, and we hope that we could take your mind off some of that, for a little bit. We'll have a new podcast that'll drop Thursday morning. Just a reminder, you can hear Teddy from 2 to 6 on Sports Talk 1400. You can hear me on SiriusXM Big 12 Radio, channel 375. We hope you all have a great week. Until next time, we appreciate y'all for listening, and do what you always do, Oklahoma. Take care of each other.